The grand throne room of Xyrex Prime shimmered under the twin moons above. Its ceiling stretched high into the sky, made of crystal glass and gold-lined arches. Alien nobles from across the galaxy stood in quiet formation, each one dressed in their finest robes, armor, or scales depending on their species. At the far end of the room sat Empress Valsera, ruler of the Thalzia Empire, a vast star dominion known for its power, pride, and long history of conquest. Her skin shimmered like polished stone, and her eyes burned with cold fire. Around her, 12 daughters stood tall, each a princess and warrior in her own right. This was not a celebration. This was a ceremony of submission. In the center of the floor stood a single human, Commander Reese Calder. He was dressed not in chains or armor, but in simple black and gray uniform. His posture was straight, his hands at his sides, his expression unreadable. Behind him, 2 Thalzia guards stood ready, holding long energy spears. The hall remained silent as Empress Valsera rose from her throne. Today, she announced, her voice echoing across the hall, marks the anniversary of the Earth's defeat in the Galactic Frontier Wars. As tradition demands, the defeated must show loyalty to their rightful rulers. She stepped forward, stopping just before Reese. The silence deepened. Valsera looked down at him with a half-smile. Human, you represent your planet, you represent your kind. You have been granted the honor to kneel before me. Reese said nothing. The Empress raised her foot, carefully manicured and wrapped in ceremonial gold silk. She held it just inches away from his face. "Kiss my foot," she ordered, her voice calm, but sharp. "Prove to this galaxy that your species accepts our rule." The entire court watched in silence. Some alien nobles whispered to each other. Others smirked, knowing what was coming. Commander Reese looked at the foot, then looked up at the Empress. Slowly, very calmly, he took a deep breath, and then he spat. The clear spit hit the top of Valsera's foot and slid down onto the floor. A gasp spread through the court like fire through dry grass. One of the princesses stepped forward in shock. A guard raised his spear. Valsera stood frozen for a moment, then she stepped back, her face now cold like ice. Reese stood straight, unmoving. His voice came out low and steady. "Humanity bows to no one." The Empress's expression didn't change. She raised one hand slightly. The guards grabbed Reese and forced him to his knees. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. "You insult the throne of the Thalzia," Valsera said. "You insult me, my daughters, and this galaxy's peace. This is not defiance. This ... is an act of war." The hall erupted. Nobles shouted, some in anger, others in disbelief. Some seemed ... impressed. Reese was pulled up and dragged toward the prison halls. He said nothing, but as he passed under the golden arch of the throne room, he looked back once, meeting Valsera's eyes directly. He was not afraid. Far away, on Earth, the news spread quickly. Every screen, every network, every feed showed the moment. Commander Reese Calder spitting on the Empress's foot. The Thalzia called it dishonor. But on Earth, he was a hero. In the halls of Earth's United Council, diplomats argued. Should they apologize? Should they surrender further? Or should they stand behind Reese? General Mara Nox slammed her hand on the table. "He did what we should have done years ago." He reminded them, "We're not pets, we're not tools, we're not theirs." Some agreed, some were afraid, but in quiet corners of the Earth's military, secret plans were already forming. Whispered names passed between commanders: Operation Iron Pulse, the Ghost Fleet, the Return. Because if Reese Calder had the courage to spit in the face of an empire ... then Earth had no choice but to stand with him. Meanwhile, in his cell beneath the royal palace, Reese sat alone. The walls hummed with energy fields. There were no windows, no furniture, only silence. But Reese smiled to himself. He knew exactly what he had done, and he knew Earth was watching. To be continued in Part 2, The Echo of Defiance. News of the throne room incident traveled faster than light. By the time Commander Reese Calder had spent his first night in the royal prison of Xyrex Prime, millions of humans across Earth, Mars, and even the outer colonies had already seen the footage, the spit, the silence, and the sentence. To the Thalzia Empire, it was disgraceful. To humans, it was legend. In Earth's orbit, a quiet warship named Echo's End floated among the stars. Inside, a meeting was taking place in a sealed, darkened chamber. General Mara Nox, head of Earth's Strategic Resistance Division, stood in front of a screen showing Reese's defiant face. Around her, 6 officers sat in silence. "We trained him to survive," she said, "but we never expected him to start a revolution with just a single act." He spat. one officer said, confused. He didn't fire a weapon. He didn't even resist. Mara nodded. Exactly. He stood before the most powerful empress in the galaxy and reminded her that we still have a spine. That Spit may be the most dangerous weapon we've deployed. The room grew quiet. Is it time? Another officer asked. She gave a slow nod. Yes. Activate Operation Iron Pulse. Reese doesn't die in that cell. He comes home. Inside the royal prison on Zyrex Prime, Reese sat on the cold stone floor, arms resting on his knees. There were no beds, no blankets. The only sound was a low hum from the energy barrier across the doorway. He wasn't broken. In fact, his spirit felt sharper than ever. When the door opened, he didn't look up. Only when the tall figure entered and stopped in front of him did he raise his head. Princess Zeren, third daughter of Empress Valsera, stood with her arms crossed. Her sharp purple eyes stared at him. Unreadable. Why? She asked at last. You knew the punishment. You knew the risk. Why throw away your life over pride? Reese stood slowly. It wasn't pride, it was principle. She frowned, explained. You can conquer lands, you can take people's weapons. But when you ask someone to kneel, you're asking for their soul. I won't give you that. Number. Human should. Zaren looked him over again. You're either brave ... or foolish. Maybe both, he replied calmly. She turned to leave, but before walking out, she said, My mother will execute you before the moon's third rise. You still have time to beg. Use it wisely. Back on Earth, the secret military base beneath the Andes Mountains buzzed with energy. Operation Iron Pulse was now live. Ships were being moved. Teams were chosen. Captain Myra Shao, one of Earth's best stealth operatives, looked over her small strike team. 4 humans stood before her, all wearing black infiltration suits. Each had completed at least a dozen off-world missions. She looked each of them in the eye. Our job is simple. Get Reese out alive. Leave no trace. No dead guards. No but. We're ghosts. One of the soldiers raised a hand. What if we're seen? Mira's tone turned cold. Then we make sure the Empress knows that ghosts ... can haunt the galaxy. Watched with growing interest. Some alien species laughed at humanity's defiance. Others started wondering, what if the humans aren't as weak as we thought? On the Outer Rim, the Zarn Collective, longtime rivals of the Thalzir, began secret communications. They had no love for Earth but even less for Empress Valsara. The humans can rise, whispered High Speaker Jola of Zarn, perhaps ... It's time the Thalzir fell. Inside her palace, Empress Valsera was not calm. In her private chambers, she paced in silence. Her advisors warned her, executing the human might cause more unrest than control. Even now, reports came in alien protests, trade partners asking questions, small human colonies refusing orders, but pride was not easy to kill. He spit on me, she said through gritted teeth. Before my daughters, before the galaxy. A guard entered and bowed. My Empress, we've detected unusual activity near the outer defense grid. Possible stealth ships. Her eyes narrowed. Humans, they dare to come here again. She turned to her daughter. Increase security and move the human to the inner prison. I want eyes on him. As night fell on Zyrax Prime, a black shape glided silently across the clouds. The Whisperhawk, Mirajiao's stealth ship, landed in the rocky shadow of the Palace Mountains. Her team spread out, cloaked by bending light, their movements quiet as shadows. Using stolen codes and a hacked Thalzir drone, they made it inside the energy grid. Step by step, corridor by corridor, they reached the prison zone. Suddenly, one of the team members froze. 2 guards, coming fast. Mira raised a hand. In silence, they disappeared into the shadows. The guards passed without notice. She whispered into her calm. 1 more level down. Reese is close. In his new cell, Reese paced slowly. He felt something in the air, a change. The lights flickered. And then, the wall shimmered and Mira Shao stepped through it. Commander, she said with a grin, you ready to go home? He blinked, then smiled. Took you long enough. She tossed him a stealth suit. Put this on. We've got 6 minutes. As they moved through the corridors, alarms suddenly blared. They saw us. Mira said, no more silence. Reese grabbed a guard's, dropped shock baton, then let's make some noise. In the palace, Empress Valsera stood before a war screen. Activate all defense units. Seal the gates. I want that human dead. But it was too late. The Whisperhawk rose into the sky, fire at its back, shields crackling. Inside, Reese stood beside Mira, staring back at the palace as it grew smaller behind them. We made it, she said. Not yet, he replied. This was just the first step. Across the stars, billions of humans watched the breaking news. Commander Reese Calder has escaped. Earth is rising. To be continued in Part 3, Fire in the Throne Room. The stars around Xyrex Prime burned brightly, but not brighter than the fire, now building in the hearts of millions. Commander Reese Calder was alive. He had escaped from the most secure alien prison in the galaxy. The whole universe was talking, and Earth, once quiet and obedient under Thalsia rule, had now become a symbol of rebellion. Inside the sleek black ship Whisper Hawk, Reese stood with Captain Myra Zhao, looking at a holographic map of the galaxy. "We have two options," she said, pointing. "Return to Earth, or strike them while they're still confused." Reese didn't look away from the map. "They think we're running. Let's do the opposite." Myra smiled. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." Back on Xyrex Prime, Empress Valsera was furious. Her throne room was dark now. The nobles who once laughed had grown silent. The Empress had moved to emergency rule. Soldiers filled the streets, drones scanned the skies, and yet the people whispered about the human who refused to kneel and escaped. Her daughters tried to comfort her, but she would not be calmed. "Destroy every Earth ship," she ordered. "Send a message to their council. No more warnings, no more mercy." "But, Mother," said Princess Zarian, "if we kill them all, the galaxy may turn against us." Valsera's voice turned cold. "Let them. I built this empire with fear. I will not lose it to respect." In the orbit above Xyrex Prime, human and allied forces gathered in secret. Small groups, hidden ships, rogue colonies, even aliens who hated the Thalsia now offered help to Reese in his growing rebellion. They called themselves the Free Stars. Reese stood before a group of human and alien warriors. His voice was calm but powerful. "We were never meant to live on our knees," he said. "The Empress wants war. Let's give her one, but not in fear, in hope." A cheer rose. Blasters were checked. Armor was tightened. The plan was simple: infiltrate the palace, expose Valsera's crimes to the galaxy, and destroy the control systems that powered her communication towers. No more lies, no more silence. Night fell over Xyrex Prime. The palace stood tall and bright, its walls glowing with energy fields. But tonight, the shadows moved. Myra Zhao and her team glided through the palace corridors again, this time with more fighters behind them. Aliens from oppressed worlds, human rebels, and even a few Thalzira citizens who wanted freedom. They had all joined this mission. Reese moved with purpose. Every hallway reminded him of his cell. Every golden wall reminded him of the moment. Valsera lifted her foot and tried to break him, but he didn't bend. And now neither would the galaxy. Inside the palace throne room, Valsera sat on her throne. Calm again, until the alarms screamed. A guard ran in. "Intruders. They've breached the east gates." Valsera rose. "So, he returns. Let him come." She pressed a button beside her throne. The golden floor shifted, revealing a massive platform rising from below. On it stood a tall black silver armored battlesuit designed only for royal use. "I will end this myself." Fires lit the night. Sky explosions rocked the palace walls. The rebels fought with strategy, not strength, disabling power systems, shutting down weapons, and using distraction tactics. Reese and Myra led the core team straight toward the throne room. Blaster fire echoed behind them. Guards fell. Drones buzzed past. Finally they reached the massive gold doors. Reese looked at Myra. "You ready?" She grinned. "I've been waiting for this." They burst through the doors into the throne room now, glowing red with alarm lights. Empress Valsera stood in her battle armor, glowing with energy. "Wait in, sir," she said, voice amplified. "The disrespectful human returns." To kneel at last, Reese stepped forward. "No, I came to finish what I started." With a shout, Valsera charged. Her suit's fists crashed into the floor as Reese dodged left. Myra fired, but energy shields deflected her shots. The fight had begun. The throne room became a war zone. Reese ducked, rolled, and struck with stolen blades. Myra used high-speed drones to distract the Empress. Other rebels entered, helping from all sides. Valsera fought like a monster, fast, powerful, and full of rage. "You were nothing," she roared, a low-born soldier from a dust planet. Reese replied, his voice calm, "Yet here I am, still standing." He leaped forward, planting a shock device on her armor. It sparked. Her shield dropped for 2 seconds, enough time for Myra to shoot a plasma bolt at her shoulder. Valsera screamed. The throne cracked beneath the battle. Lights burst. Walls shook. Finally, Reese stood over Valsera, his weapon pointed at her. She was down, her suit damaged, her pride broken. Kill me, she whispered. Reese shook his head. No, that's what you'd do. He turned, lifting a small device. Broadcast, he ordered. The rebels activated it. Across the galaxy, every screen suddenly showed Reese Calder standing in the heart of the Thalsia Palace. This is Commander Reese Calder. I am human, and I am free. Today, the Empress of Thalsia has fallen not to guns, but to truth. He stepped aside as Valsera was pulled to her knees by her own people. We don't want your throne. We want freedom for all worlds. From this day forward, no one bows again. The message ended. The galaxy shook. On Earth people wept with joy. On distant planets, citizens rose in protest. Even in Thalsia cities, people removed the Empress's banners. Reese Calder had done the impossible in the throne room. As dawn broke, Princess Zara approached Reese. She was not angry. She was wrong about you, she said, about your people. Reese looked at the broken throne. We don't want power, just peace. Zarya nodded. Then let's build something new. The war wasn't over yet. But something had changed. A single act of defiance had become a spark. Now it was a fire no empire could put out. To be continued. In Part 4, The Battle of Burning Skies. The stars above Xyrix Prime were no longer peaceful. They burned with fire, smoke, and chaos. From the dark edge of space came the largest Thalsia fleet ever gathered, an armada of warships, carriers, and destroyers. The High Generals had taken control after Empress Valsera's fall. They called it the Last Purge. Their mission, crush all rebellion, destroy Earth, and erase Reese Calder from history. Commander Reese stood on the command deck of the Echoes, and, watching the enemy fleet appear on the long-range sensors. They've come, said Captain Mirashal beside him. Reese nodded. Then this is it, the final battle. Down below on the surface of Xyrix Prime, things had changed fast. After Valsera's defeat in the throne room, her daughter, Princess Zarian, had taken leadership, but not as Empress. Instead, she stood as a temporary voice of peace. She declared, the Empire broken and opened communication with the Free Stars Alliance. Xyrix Prime will not fight alongside the fleet, she said, speaking to her people. We are no longer slaves of pride or fear. Still, the Thalsia High Generals ignored her. They wanted war. They had thousands of ships and billions of soldiers, and they were on their way, all across the galaxy. Allies of Earth received the call. From the Martian dome cities came red war cruisers. From Europa's icy tunnels rose silent hunter subs. From the distant moons of Kepler 9, old rebel warbands returned, ready to strike. Even alien species, Joinzon, Meraki, Rithu, they all came to fight, not just for Earth but for freedom. But Free Star's fleet was outnumbered, outgunned, but united. On board the Echo's End, Reese looked at the giant holomap. Blinking red dots showed enemy ships, green lights showed friendly ones. We're surrounded, Myra said. Reese smiled. Good, that means we don't need to chase them. In the dark hangars of the Thalsia Armada, soldiers prepared their weapons. War drums echoed through the ships. Their commanders shouted orders. One general, Thalarez, spoke loudly to his troops. Do not forget, the humans spat on our empress. He stood against our throne. This is not just a battle, this is revenge. The soldiers screamed in reply. They wanted blood. The first shot came at dawn. A Thalsia destroyer fired on a small human scout ship. It exploded in the sky above Xyrix Prime like a sun. The war had begun. In orbit, fire lit the stars. Fighter ships flew in swarms. Lasers crossed the void like lightning. Giant ships collided, breaking into pieces. The sky became a battlefield. Inside the Echo's End, Reese gave orders calmly. Send squadrons Alpha and Delta to the north flank. Target their carriers. Protect the civilians on Xyrix Prime at all costs. All systems online, Mira reported. Shields holding, weapons hot. The ship shook as enemy fire hit. We can't outgun them, she said. Only outsmart them, Reese agreed. Let's draw them in, then strike their heart. On the ground, Princess Zarian led peacekeepers, evacuating injured people and helping human-alien families who had settled after the fall of the Empress. She looked up at the burning sky. Reese, be safe. Meanwhile, deep in the enemy fleet, Thalarez activated Omega Protocol, a secret plan to drop a firebomb on Xyrix Prime itself. If they couldn't rule the world, they would destroy it. He smiled coldly. Let the world see what happens to those who defy us. Inside the Echo's End, the sensors picked it up. Commander Amira shouted. They've launched a planet killer ATA. 10 minutes. Reese's eyes narrowed. Then we stop it. He turned to the ship's AI, plot an intercept course. Reese, Mira said seriously, That bomb is protected by 6 destroyers. We won't survive that run. Reese stepped forward. We don't need to survive. We just need to stop it. The ship turned through the burning battlefield. The Echo's end flew straight toward the Bama, huge spinning sphere of plasma heading for Xyrex Prime's surface. Enemy ships opened fire. Lasers cracked the shields. The hull burned. Systems failed one by one, but Reese and Mira kept going. Inside the ship, lights turned red. Smoke filled the bridge. Yet the humans did not stop. They got closer, and then ... launch countercore. Reese ordered. The ship released a small device, its only remaining power core, straight into the bomb. A flash dot, then silence. The bomb exploded far above the planet, burning the sky but sparing the world. The Echo's end was caught in the shockwave. It spun, burned, and drifted. On the ground, Zarian watched the sky go white, then clear. She gasped. They did it. They stopped it. In space, the Free Stars fleet saw the explosion and charged. With renewed fire, they attacked the now Thalzira ships one by one. Enemy vessels fell. Some surrendered, some exploded in silence. Thalarez tried to escape, but a Zaan cruiser rammed his ship into dust. The battle had turned. Hours later, the sky was quiet. The Thalzir armada was gone, destroyed or driven away. The Free Stars had won, but at a cost. In the wreckage of the Echo's end, Myra Shao crawled out from broken metal, coughing. Her face was burned. Her body ached, but she was alive. And beside her, pinned under steel, was Reese. Hey, he whispered weakly. Did we win? She nodded, tears in her eyes. Yeah, we did. He smiled. Good. I really didn't want to kiss that Empress's feet. Myra laughed through her pain. You never do anything the easy way. Reese Calder was taken to a medical station. He survived. The galaxy now knew his name, not as a soldier but as a symbol. In the weeks that followed, the Free Stars signed a peace pact with the new government on Xyrex Prime. Zaran became a leader of peace. Not a queen, not an empress. Reese was offered medals, titles, even planets. He refused them all. I only did what needed to be done, he said. Now, let's make sure no one ever needs to do it again. The war was over. The skies were still, burning from memory. But peace had a chance. And the man who once spat in defiance now stood as a legend across the stars. To be continued in Part 5, Legacy of the Spit. The galaxy was no longer the same. Where once the Thalzir Empire ruled with iron claws and endless fear, now there was hope, fragile but real. Commander Reese Calder, the human who refused to bow, had become a symbol not just for Earth, but for every world that dreamed of freedom. Months after the Great Battle, Reese stood on the balcony of the new Unity Council headquarters on Xyrex Prime. The sky was clear and blue. The air smelled fresh, something new in a place that had known only smoke and war. Beside him stood Princess Zaran. She smiled gently. You changed everything, Reese. Your act of defiance started a fire no one could stop. Reese nodded, looking out at the crowds gathered below. Different species, different colors, but all together united. We didn't do it alone, he said. The galaxy wanted change. I just showed the way. Zarian looked thoughtful. You showed more than that. You showed courage. You showed that even the smallest voice can make the loudest sound. Across the universe, stories of Reese's fights spread. Children on distant planets read about how a simple human soldier stood tall before an empire's queen and spat on her feet, a symbol of resistance, of pride, and hope. Teachers told students how one act could spark a revolution. Leaders from many worlds came to learn how to build peace from the ashes of war. Yet Reese himself remained humble. In a quiet room filled with old war medals and gifts from grateful planets, he spoke to Myra. Shao, do you ever think about what could have happened if I had knelt? Mira smiled softly. No, because then, we wouldn't be here. The galaxy wouldn't be free. Reese laughed lightly. Good point. He looked at the window, seeing stars far away. But this peace, it needs care. It's fragile. Mira nodded. And we'll guard it together. At the Unity Council, Zaran worked to build a new future. No more empires. No more forced obedience. Instead, worlds shared knowledge, resources, and respect. Old enemies learned to listen. Old allies worked harder to protect the weak. And Earth, once a quiet planet, became a beacon of hope. But peace was not easy. Some Thalzir generals refused to accept defeat. They gathered in dark corners of space, plotting. Reese and the council knew this. We cannot forget, Zarian said, or they will return. Reese agreed. The fight for freedom never ends. One evening, Reese walked through a garden under the stars. A young boy approached him, a child of both human and Thalzir blood. Sir, Billboy said shyly, My teacher told me about you, about the day you spat on the Empress's feet. Reese smiled gently. Yes, the boy's eyes were bright. That was brave. I want to be brave like you. Reese knelt down. Bravery is not about what you do in front of others. It's what you do when no one is watching. The boy nodded slowly, understanding. Promise me, Reese said, that you will stand up for what is right even when it is hard. The boy's voice was strong. I promise. News came from distant parts of the galaxy. A small planet, freed from Thalzia control, a peaceful trade agreement signed, a new school teaching unity. The dream of a better future was growing. In a quiet ceremony, Reese was asked to speak before the Unity Council. He looked at the faces before him, humans, aliens, former enemies, now friends. He spoke simply. Today, we remember the past, but we do not live in its shadow. We honor those who fought and those who fell. But more than that, we look to tomorrow with hope, courage, and respect. Let the story of the spit on the Empress's feet remind us that even the smallest act of defiance can change the course of history, and may we all have the strength to stand tall no matter the challenge. The crowd erupted in applause. Reese stepped down, knowing his journey was not finished. The galaxy was healing, but it would need guardians, people willing to protect peace and fight for justice. And Reese Calder was ready. As the stars twinkled overhead, Reese felt a quiet pride. He had started a war with a single act, and now he was building a legacy of peace. The human who spat on an Empress's feet was no longer just a soldier. He was a symbol of hope for all who dared to dream of freedom. The end.